We're
Right as we go
live.
live.
Hi, everybody. Right as we're live. Good job. Good job. Yay.
I have to wear it.
Yes, you have to. We have a contract or something, probably. Hi,
my
everybody.
And at some point, you have to ask where it's at.
It's true.
Hi, guys. We're live. Hello to everybody that's watching this afterwards. I'm Pete from the Ponderings of Pete, and we have other people here with me that decided that they like me enough to come on the channel a little bit.
I wouldn't go that
I
far.
don't remember agreeing to that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I've watched like one video of yours, so the jury's still out.
And we have
Pete.
So, who are you guys?
Anyways,
Introduce yourselves.
Well, since I have my nice wizard hat, I think I'll go first. I'm Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads, or you can call me Fizbin. I review sci-fi and fantasy on BookTube.
I think if we're going this way, hi, I'm Nico from Nico's Book Reviews. I didn't think about comparing myself to a Dragonlance character, but I don't think there's one quite lazy enough, so we'll probably skip that. But I do mostly fantasy and was excited to jump in here and do a reread.
Go ahead.
Which way are we going? I'll go next. I'm Beth Ann. My channel name is Beth Ann Bruninga Sokolar. So I don't know, maybe we'll do links down below or something. Because that's a bit much for people to remember to search for. And I read a whole bunch of stuff. I do read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. I've been reading a lot of that this summer because it is definitely my comfort happy place, but I read a lot of other things as well. So come on over and check it out.
and I'm Evie. My channel is She Was Only Evie. I read a little bit of everything, but apparently I'm known as the classics geek. So if you like classics, especially Wuthering Heights or Persuasion or Frankenstein, I'm your gal. So.
And I'm John from Hey Y'all Listen Up, and I'm the Flint character of this group because I'm a grumpy old man. And so I've been reading, I read mostly kind of older science fiction and fantasy. That's kind of what I've been covering mostly on my channel. But one of my earliest videos was a review of the Chronicles. And then I read the Legends trilogy last year, and I'm working through the Preludes series now.
Very nice, very nice.
Yep, definitely check out all these people below. The links are down below. Check out their channels. They're awesome. I have consumed videos from all of them, and I can confirm. So we're here to talk about Dragons of Winter Night, the second book in the Dragonlance Chronicles series, connected to the D&D setting. So if you want to read more about a D&D setting, this is the place to come and talk about it a little bit. But if you have no idea what D&D is, that doesn't matter. You can still read the books, and it's great. What did everybody think about the second book in this series?
So are we allowed to talk spoilers or?
Let's do a light spoiler. We're probably going to get over this quick, but a light spoiler, non-spoiler section.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I'll just start because I have feelings apparently about it. So I first read, or is it? I'm echoing, I think. So I apologize. But so I first read the Dragonlance series when I was middle school-ish, and long story short, having read after reading Dragons of Autumn Twilight, I feel like it didn't quite hold up, but it was enjoyable enough. And then continuing on with Winter Night, the same frustrations that I had with Dragons of Autumn Twilight on that reread are still there, but I feel like it's a more cohesive story. And I feel like Weiss and Hickman tried to do a lot more with their characters, and I really enjoyed that. So, and appreciated that, I should say.
think I'm going to be the one here like defending my childhood, because I also read this in middle school. And so I've now reread it several times as an adult. And so, of course, I'm seeing, flaws in the writing, plot holes and things that I didn't notice when I was 13, 14. But I'm still just like these books make me cry like every time I read them, because they just hit me right in my nostalgia feels, I guess. But yeah, I would agree with you, Evie, that I think the overarching sort of like themes and the longer plot arcs and character arcs are really, they come through more in this book. Although the Sylvanesti dream sequence drives me a little bit crazy. I don't think mentioning that is a spoiler.
Oddly enough, I think that was my favorite part on this reread. So
really interesting. Okay.
I actually enjoyed the dream sequence a lot. But it was a lot less scary as an adult than it was as a kid.
Yeah.
I remember it being different, before, but I too read it in I'd say probably middle school for the first time, and I actually reread the Chronicles last year. And so overall, I do think it held up pretty well. There are definitely some issues, but I always feel like Dragons of Autumn Twilight is kind of very much the setup book. And like when I was a kid and read it, I had no idea that it was D&D or what really was going on with that, or that was the point. But looking back, it seems like that was the okay, here's our quest. We're gonna give you the character sheets almost, and then book 2 is where we're actually writing a novel now. We're gonna really go out, and so this one has a lot more narratives, and it starts doing my favorite thing where it kind of pairs characters off, and it's the inner character dynamics are still what I just love about this, because there definitely are some flaws. Liam's in there saying that Forgotten Realms is better than Dragonlance, and I haven't read enough Forgotten Realms to confirm.
To be fair, he is a Forgotten Realms nerd.
Yeah. We got him to read this, so he's trying some Dragonlance, but yeah, it's the character dynamics are what really have held up so well for me, is basically what I was getting at, just because I like Flint and Tasselhoff, and Sturm versus all the other ones, and you have Raceland and Caramon and Tanis kind of with everyone, and it's just all of that. That's really what I enjoy so much about these books.
Yeah, I read this for the first time when I was 18, and that was 30 years ago. And I was a freshman in college when I read it, and I'd already started to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I think it was my roommate at the time handed me the books and said, "Here, read these." And the first book especially is very much like playing the second edition rules of Dungeons and Dragons. I think that's why it's my favorite, even though especially on this most recent reread, I really noticed, how kind of bad the writing is in the first one. Now, the second one, the writing really kind of evens out. I didn't notice the writing in this one as much. And there are a lot of great character moments in this one. What frustrated me about this book is that there's a couple instances where we're told something happens and we don't get to see it happen. Mm-hmm. And so that bothered me. And then there's a scene in the spoiler section that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think. Go now?
Go.
Okay. So I've been reading Dragonlance for 20 years now, which just makes me feel super old. So I've read 30 something, some large unnecessary number of these books. And so going back and reading this one, it felt a lot more episodic than the first book. The first book kind of jumped plot point to plot point, just kind of quick traveled everywhere. But this felt like self-contained episodes. But I felt that the characters were a lot deeper and stronger than they were in book 1. Specifically, Sturm's character really redeemed himself in Winter's Night, because I couldn't stand him in Autumn Twilight.
What's funny is I'm reading from the annotated version. And the authors actually admit they tried to make Sturm unlockable in the first book. That was a deliberate decision on their part.
I didn't know that.
I'm so on the fence with Sturm, because what happens in book 2, I love, but he's kind of odd in book 1. And then I won't say what it is, but the fourth book, the follow-up to this, just makes something up that happened off screen with him too, and I'm just like, what? That makes no sense. So I feel like he was a character who had very much had some highs and lows.
I think in the first book, I was ambivalent towards Sturm. Like he was lost in the mix to me, so I wasn't like, oh, I don't like Sturm at all. It's just like he's there, cool.
Well, he does annoying things in the first book. Like, he almost gets them all killed a couple times because, heaven forbid, a woman get insulted or something. And it's like, dude, just calm down, take a seat. Like, let's not get killed by goblins. And he does have one moment like that in this second book, in Tarsus, where he sort of almost pulls that crap. And then Tanis sort of manipulates him to go do something else instead. And it's just like, can we not with the like immature chivalry? I don't know. And then he matures after that. But I guess I'm the folks who are saying Sturm is better in the second book. I totally agree. But we do still get that bit carrying over from the first book, that sort of unlikable, over the top bit. And then he mellows out. Yeah.
And here again, it comes from him being a lawful good character. If you've ever played D&D, anybody who ever plays a lawful good character is always a pain in the rear. It's just how those characters
lawful stupid.
Play.
Lawful stupid characters.
Yeah.
Because they have to do the right thing, even if it's dumb.
Even if it gets people killed.
Yeah, book 2, it shows like, yeah, he was this rigid kind of paladin, lawful good, but then he starts to actually think about doing what's right, even if it's not specifically the rules. And so that depth, we're like, okay, we're gonna let him be a character instead of a character sheet. And so that's, yeah, like the growth and especially the ending, super good with him.
I think his character saw the most improvement overall out of the entire Heroes of the Lance.
I would debate you. There's another character that I think heavily improved even more than he did in this book.
Who would that be?
Lorana.
Yeah. Yeah, she turns into a real person.
Lorana's never been a favorite of mine.
I liked her a lot. I think out of the characters in this book, I liked Lorana the best because I felt like she had the most character growth and was on screen. I was like,
Lorana's one of my least favorite characters ever.
What's funny is she's one of their favorite characters. I don't remember if it was Margaret or Tracy, but she's actually named
Lorana
after somebody they know.
Is modeled after Tracy's wife.
Is that okay? I knew it was one of them. I just couldn't remember which one.
Yes, so I will say that I think the growth of Lorana and Sturm is because of the focus of the story on those two characters. I feel like we spent way more time with those two than any of the others, which I was very sad because I love Tasselhoff and I need more Tasselhoff in my life. So
it's the true hero of the story.
It does switch focuses a little bit for 3.
Yeah,
I'll say we get a lot. There were things that I kept thinking were going to happen in book 2 that it must happen in book 3. I had some major events mixed around, and so I'm like, I'm getting close to the end. Like, when are they going to go do this and see these people? And I'm like, I guess that's in book 3. So
yeah,
yes.
It's funny because right before we went live, I was telling Pete about this, but I think the reason the Chronicles get so much criticism is because, don't come after me, people. It's kind of written a little like Malazan. A little like Malazan, where literally all the richness comes from the E.N.C. Esselmont books, filling in the gaps, and Dragonlance does the exact same thing.
Not sure I agree with you, Andrew. I don't know the Malazan.
I would fight you on that, Andrew.
I would also fight you on that because I think I haven't read the Esselmont books yet, but I think the world of Malazan that I've gotten in through, which is through book 8, the richness is there, specifically, and it doesn't always immediately be there, but it definitely is there. Also, I think some of the Esselmont books are more heavily criticized because, I mean, most of you have probably heard Alan's rant about that
the first
one
3 are
line.
terrible. I'm aware.
Yeah, but the richness is definitely
is like literally. So like we've got where it just jumps in and like, oh, we've got the hammer of Karsus. Here you go. Let's go off. That is a whole other book that isn't included in Chronicles.
That
same
whole
with
thing
the
too.
hey, we've got this spear in Ice Reach. That's a whole nother book. Leaving in Autumn Twilight, that's a whole 6 books. Leaving Solace.
Yeah, but we do get world building, and so I guess it depends what you mean by richness. Like we do get history with the Cataclysm and the clerics versus the gods and all that sort of backstory and setting up the framework. But yeah, there are big gaps. So I guess it's like, yeah, what do you mean by richness?
Yeah, richness can be taken a lot of ways. Literally, it just fleshes it out and makes it a more full, cohesive story.
I think with Malazan that I know of, in hammering after this comparison, the richness comes in later books as you understand more. Like in the first few books, it starts in Memories of Ice, in my opinion. But in the later books, like especially House of Chains, I think there's a lot of things. There's actually one huge specific thing that's, in my opinion, that's kind of fleshed out, that affects that is an element of Dead House Gates that's fleshed out in House of Chains. But
guys, this is now a Malazan live show.
All I tried to do was
this was a bait and switch.
Sorry,
and derailed it.
Everybody. It was like that was the new topic introduced, so it just made me laugh.
Right.
But to pivot and transition, I feel like some of the left out parts. Some of it does feel intentional, and maybe they knew they were going to write them later, maybe not. But it just kind of felt like the dungeon master setting up the new game, where he's telling you, he's setting the scene, like this story, and you always have the song or the poem about what had happened. And so I can definitely see why that's annoying. And I even remember as a kid, I'm like, what the heck? I don't remember any of that happening. What's going on here? At first, I thought I missed a book somewhere, and so I definitely can get that reaction, but it's kind of one of those things where it's the style they were going for. A lot of the flaws also make a lot of sense, and I think a lot of them at least were done intentionally because that was the style they were going for.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Evie. Oh, I was going to say,
I was just going to say that I think that actually the kind of broadness and kind of skipping over, other than obviously being an homage and coming from Dungeons and Dragons, it works with their style of writing as well. Like if you had to go back to Malazan, if you had Steven Eriksson's style of writing, telling this story in a similar way, I don't think it would work, and it would be even more frustrating, I think. But I think it works for Weiss and Hickman's style of writing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And it also, it took them a while to settle. Like John said, it seemed like they were settling through the first book, and then they sort of hit their stride a bit more in the second book. I think that was you, John. But I think the action happening off the page works better for the Ice Wall period because they include a flashback. It's not just the song and the poem. We actually get a flashback of, I think, is it Lorana, remembering what happened. And the Hammer of Karis bit in the beginning has always fallen flat for me because we just sort of get the poem version. We don't actually get a flashback. We don't get that emotional connection of how that experience affected one of the characters, whereas we see real character growth in the Ice Wall episode, even though it happened off the page, if that makes sense to anybody else. Yeah. But to me, it's that difference 100%. That the flashback was included. So I'll land right in the middle on that one, where it works in one part of the book and doesn't really work in the beginning part of the book.
So to clarify, we're just going to go full spoilers now. Just
all right, sounds good. Storm.
So with the
go for the big one right from the beginning.
Speaking about the hammer sequence versus the ice wall sequence, I think that's actually a really good point, Bethan, because I was kind of confused with the hammer sequence because afterwards you have Elistan, who's a completely random new character. Then who is this? And then he's all buddy. He was?
Yeah, Elistan's in the first one.
He was the dying old man.
He got healed.
He got healed by.
I thought he was a young dude. I thought he was
No, he was a village elder, and he was converted and healed on his deathbed by Goldmoon.
This makes a little bit more sense now, and why I was confused because I thought Elistan was this young, strapping lad that was close to Lorana, and that Lorana was finally getting over Tanis with this Elistan dude at the beginning. So
well, he's older, but he is still described as a bit strapping. So
okay, so yeah, older man.
To be fair, he's still younger than Lorana.
He's younger than Tanis.
Well, no, Tanis and Lorana are both elves. They're like Tanis is like 100.
Yeah,
he's like 140.
Now
just
Tanis
think
in
Aragorn.
human years is about 30.
Yeah.
I do love too the comment later when Flint is defending Lorana's honor and talks about how he's known her since she was a baby, and it's such a minor detail, but it's fun for me having the old man be the dwarf who legitimately is older than the two elves, even though the elves will live much longer than a dwarf's lifespan, but they are young elves only being like around 80 or 100 or whatever, and he's like 150, and it's just kind of it plays more into the grumpy old man versus like you could have thrown a joke like we're older than you, right? But they kept it and leaned into the old grumpy dwarf trope, which I love.
I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, the hammer thing, that was the big one I was saying when I referenced I thought I missed something in the first book when I read them as a kid, because I'm like, I don't remember this at all. And then the ice wall thing happens, and you get that put in later, so that definitely makes sense. But like the hammer, it kind of explains the importance, but that was definitely an odd choice to have such an important thing. And once again, the only thing I could think of is it's like the dungeon master's like, you have this magical artifact that you quested for. Now let's start our campaign.
And then they leave it behind.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's why the whole thing, like I know the importance of it, but then I'm pretty sure they don't even use it to forge the lances.
Yeah,
so
it's described the guy with the silver arm. He's just like, they needed the hammer because they weren't good enough. I am good enough.
Yeah, but like then why include the hammer plot line? Because
they didn't know.
They're making it up as they went.
That's the one part it does feel like that.
Yeah.
Dwarven Depths, which covers the quest for the hammer, was written in 2006. I just looked it up. So they wrote that book 20 years later.
Yeah. But it's just like, that's the one thing is you introduce this, we don't get any detail about it. Like we do much later, but we don't get any detail, and then it ends up kind of being irrelevant. So maybe that's why they didn't focus on it at the time, but that was one of the weird things. And most of it, like I enjoy these books, and I really enjoyed rereading this, even though it's not been that long, and I still remembered a lot of it. But that's one of the few I'm just like, I wouldn't have done that. But
yeah, well, I think part of what you need to understand is back in the mid 80s, you couldn't publish 800-page fantasy books. There just wasn't a market for it. So that sequence, they just had to cut it for space.
I could see that too. Yeah, I imagine they had strict limits. But I always do love the story of when they were first pitching it, because it was Tracy was pitching it. And they basically said, cool story needs more dragons. And they suggested that at like each part, they have to like have a new dragon to face off of. And so it was specifically the publishers like, no, this needs to be much more formulaic to be published. And so you would think the opposite now. They'd be like, this is too formulaic. But they actually told him, this needs to be more formulaic. And then brought in Margaret Weiss to do it together. So
formula was still new.
Another thing to remember is these are novelization of Dungeons and Dragons modules. So, they're written to kind of be companions for those modules.
Yeah. Another thing that's always annoyed me, not to drag Elistan through the mud too much, but part of the ending of the first book is that Goldmoon is going to go search for a human cleric, right? Like she's going to go search for a leader or something. And then the second book, it's like, oh, she found him. He was right there in Pax Darkus. And I've always been like, really? Like that was the whole, everybody had their missions at the end of the first book. And that was what hers was going to be. And then she didn't need to do much work, I guess. And I guess that was just one of those things where they're like, oh, this is getting to be too much to set up at the beginning of the second book. But it felt like they led us up to something and then took an easy way out.
Yeah, he does kind of emerge fully formed as a paladin or a cleric of, I can never say it, Palathas?
Paladin.
Oh, Paladin.
Paladin.
Yeah, Palathas is the city.
Yeah, there we go. I was just pulling random fantasy names from the series.
Also, how did he get pristine white robes when he's a refugee living in the mountains over the winter? And then he shows up in cleric robes. Maybe the dwarves had them, but
it was
during washed it in the snow.
In between the books.
What, John?
Best spell.
It was in the month between the two books.
Right, yeah.
The best spell is prestidigitation. I can't even say it right.
Prestidigitation.
Yeah, that's the best spell because it makes everything clean.
Oh.
That's how you just take dirt out of everything. It gets rid of stains. It's better than OxyClean.
Better than OxyClean.
Better than OxyClean.
Just wrote your ad jingle or something.
Become a cleric. I don't even know. Well, that's 5e.
So can we bring up Kitiara now?
Oh God.
I can't stand Kitiara.
I hate her, and she just comes out of nowhere. All of a sudden, she's in the character list in the front of the book. They're listing the companions, and they each have a little paragraph. And Kitiara gets one, and it's still we haven't been introduced. Why is she getting, a whole part of a song here?
She's only in the last 50 pages too, and I was just who? This is stupid.
She was brought up quite a lot in the first one, to be fair, and she will feature more heavily in books 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Kitiara is the worst. I've always hated her characterization.
Dragons of Summer Flame, yeah, but I think it's.
Yeah, it's a much later follow-up. It's actually not bad, and if you have without spoiling anything, if you have complaints about some of the tropes that are used in book 3, book 4 is what if we completely change it up? And it's a really interesting premise. But besides the one thing that really annoys me that relates to Sturm, but that's neither here nor there.
More Kitiara bashing?
Yes.
Yeah, we could do tons of Kitiara bashing.
Just her
with her
name
crooked
in
smile
general irritates
and her
me.
glossy black locks.
Right.
And the fact that she has a new man in her bedroom every single night.
Take off my
Your
boot.
Dragon High Lord.
Thank you, Pete. That's what I was gonna say. That was the weird thing for me, the game of take off her boots, and then it turns into something. I'm that's kind of weird. I mean, okay. She's out in full armor. They probably smell terrible. That's not. How is this? I don't know. I mean,
I guess
the toe gunk has got to be extreme.
Ew.
Oh, Canis.
Yeah, related to that little bit of reality, I was thinking as I was reading this book this time, they at least take the step of mentioning that they're all carrying backpacks in addition to their weapons, which most fantasy doesn't even acknowledge that you need infrastructure even when you're adventuring in the woods, right? But they still don't mention where are they going to pee? And I don't know. I go on backpacking trips, and so I was just sort of thinking that I was if I were writing a story about my backpacking trips, I would be talking about all that stuff.
And an editor would. I think an editor would look at that and be like,
no,
why do we need to know where they peed?
Yeah.
This is weird.
Written in the mid-80s. Written in the mid-80s.
Yeah. That's one of those things that I'm so on the fence about as a theme, because I do think it adds to realism when it's included, but when you're George R.R. Martin, I hate it because I don't want to read about somebody making water every 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was for me the extreme, he couldn't stop talking about it, versus for example, I'm reading
have a chamber pot in the room.
Well, yeah, I've read a lot of stories where it's mentioned, or they just mention there are privies or there are trenches if it's soldiers, things like that, or when traveling, there'll be the casual mention. It's not mentioned every time, but of going off to find somewhere to, I like it in moderation because it makes it feel more real. But if you do too much or none at all, it does feel a little odd. But
just have somebody
for
kill
this story, it would be
chamber
super
pot.
weird.
Just have somebody kill somebody on the chamber pot. That's all you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could work. You're bringing up the fact that there's a chamber pot.
right in the bowels.
I just realized.
And what really bugs me is, again, I am one of the people who doesn't like Tanis. I don't like him, mainly because literally he's just who am I going to sleep with? And that's his entire characterization. I make decisions, but I can't decide who I want to sleep with unless they're right in front of me. Then it's an easy choice.
Uh-huh.
It's
He's so annoying.
I don't like Tanis at all. He's like the knockoff Aragorn, to be completely honest.
Yeah, but Aragorn knew who he wanted to sleep with.
AKA knockoff Aragorn.
The angsty version.
The angsty redheaded version.
Yeah.
In all fairness to Tanis, if you read other books, you'll find that he really does love Kit, and Kit's just not, someone you should be in love with.
Disappointing.
I don't mind
in Tanis.
He does get annoying at some points. I still remember every time I get to that part in book 2, I'm just like, Tanis, come on, you dumb person, what are you doing? But it's like he definitely has kind of like the reluctant hero, reluctant leader thing going on, and it's more so like that's where all the characters, like there are some that I do like on their own, but it's more so how they interact. Like I like his interactions where he's just like, I don't understand why these people trust me and want me to lead, but then he'll like effortlessly take charge when it comes down to it, and that kind of thing as well. And so it's always I don't hate Tanis, I guess. I didn't realize that was a common thing that people didn't like Tanis, to be honest. So it's interesting.
I don't hate him. I just find him regularly annoying.
He does get on. I like Tanis, and he gets on my nerves in the third book.
Yeah,
like really badly in the third book. He gets on my nerves.
Oh boy.
And if we're talking about bad romance, Sturm and the elf woman, the insta love.
Oh my god.
And the insta love with
immediate insta love, and it makes zero sense.
Yeah, there's too much insta love in this book.
With Sturm, that makes perfect sense for me. He's just like, I am a knight, and you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I must protect you and weep tears and bring you succor. I'm like, it makes me think of like, like old like Three Musketeers or something, where like every other minute somebody's like weeping and like trying to woo a lady, and like for me that's what I got from that. So I'm like, I don't even think twice. It makes sense for the type of person Sturm is, for him to be like that. It's just, yeah.
So I will say that I totally forgot that there were two like separate like love explorations with Sturm and Alhana and Gilthanas and Silvara. For whatever reason, like I combined them in my head, and I was like, oh, it's just one love interest who happens to be a dragon or something. So I was like, wait, there are two of them? Are they both dragons? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, that one is a little sillier, and the whole thing, like, I told you the story, and now we're reliving the story. But I think like it's one of those things where you see it a lot in older fantasy, where insta love is actually insta lust. It's like, oh my gosh, you're really hot. I love you. Please come with me. And you get that a lot. And I like even the Wheel of Time has that, to be fair, with like the main. It does. And that's my favorite series. And it's just you get that sometimes where it's just like, you're the most beautiful person. That's all I need to know. I don't really care who you are immediately because you're beautiful. That's so. You get that a lot, and it's just kind of you have to deal with it.
And Silvara was at least, it didn't happen in a glance. It happened over like 3 chapters. So it was fast love. It just wasn't insta love. Like at least, well, I mean, he did kind of creep on her in the river.
Yeah, I didn't like that chapter. That chapter is.
I really liked that when I was 14, and now I'm like, ooh, let's not do that.
Any guesses on who wrote that chapter?
Tracy Hickman.
I'm gonna say it was Tracy Hickman.
I'm not gonna rant about the Dark Sword trilogy. I promise. I hated it a lot.
Yes.
But I feel like Margaret Wise wrote most of it, because like every other word was talking about the main character's supple calves. And it was such a weird thing to focus constantly, his supple calves. I had to read the word supple calves so many times. And
is that where Robert Jordan got it? Because he does that too.
He just describes everything though. He doesn't just fixate on the calves. But
Just
like
the calves.
Out of all of the things I hated about that book, that's very low on the list of that.
Were they supple, undulating calves?
Undulating.
Oh boy!
That's
Actually,
a whole nother.
I wonder when that started because I don't recall seeing that in this or that.
I have seen it in novels as early as the 80s. I read a Piers Anthony novel in the 80s, and it was in there.
I feel like he's one who would use.
Notice it now.
Now we got to go back and watch 80s ads. Are they all just like shots of calves, you know? And then it made its way into fantasy literature. It's like, that's
Well,
the
I
sexy
mean,
body part.
what was it? Conan was in the 80s, and Dragon Slayer. There was a lot of like
Conan was the
basically
30s.
like speedos and a lot of like muscled like legs.
Oh,
So
you're talking about the movies, the Conan movies.
yes,
My
Well, I was like, Robert E. Howard died in the 30s.
So
evidently,
basically, I just hate the word supple now, and whenever I read it, it annoys me.
there's also some focus in Edwardian literature, says my mother. So
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Well, since Pete's mom is here, did anybody else notice that at the start of the chapter when we're talking about the river
God.
scene,
I
you
wanted to
get to
rip
see
out
the outline
that
of the
page.
nipple too?
No, oh my god, I hated that. I wanted to rip out that page.
I didn't look
I
that
did not look
closely,
at
Andrew.
No.
Well, I only looked because in the last live show, Alan mentioned it.
Mm.
And so
Oh.
like, when I got to that, I was like, oh, here's the chapter Alan mentioned. Oh.
All it makes me think was like, were creepy river scenes an 80s staple? Because that's in Belgariad too.
Is it?
Yeah,
I
there's
blocked that part out of the Belgariad.
Huh.
I
mean,
read it, but I blocked that out.
I hated that whole series too, but that was not even the weirdest thing that happened in that book either, or that series. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like maybe that's a normal thing. You just happen to walk up and see your love interest nude in the river and think it's okay to stare for a while.
It doesn't happen often in my life.
Oh, you
Well,
don't just
how often
randomly
are you
go to
taking
the river
dabs in the
spot,
river?
man? Yeah.
Right?
Every time I turn around, I'm seeing something.
Here I thought I was all by myself, and what are you doing here?
Yeah,
So
which is creepy.
I will say that something that I've always like wondered was the actual writing process of Weiss and Hickman. So, like, the style feels like it's one person writing, but I don't know if anyone knows. Is it like Tracy Hickman would write one chapter and then Margaret Weiss would write another, or like how did that work?
John might know.
They did write separately because, especially in this one, they would like Hickman did write the scene between Silvara and Gilthanas, and Weiss wrote a lot of the battle scenes. So they would separate writing, but I can't really tell like a difference between the two writings. Like I can't tell like this person wrote one section, this person wrote another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really got that in this particular one by them. It seems pretty coherent.
The battle scenes were
Yeah.
still pretty light, though, in my opinion.
You get a lot
There isn't
more battle.
whole lot.
in books.
Although the Sturm section, that was what I call it, a siege. It wasn't really
That-
a siege.
Yeah.
It was kind of a
part is
battle
always
siege because I mean
shorter
they caved
than I
pretty
remember.
quickly.
Yeah.
But I felt that battle scene wasn't written too badly.
I
No, it's
just
just so short. I always
disappointed
remember
that
this
like
being longer.
I was disappointed because there wasn't as much as there should have. I feel like there should have been. There was like 2 sections of the battle where it was like, oh, Derek and his forces are going out to the battle. And I was like, we're probably not going to see that because we don't have a POV character out there. Didn't see that. And then, oh, we're going to get a major siege scene. It was like, oh, yeah, the Draconians came to the wall and now half of our guys are dead and they're withdrawing because it's night now. I'm like, but I want hack and slash. Come on. Can you give me?
Well,
That's one of my complaints about the series in whole is that you get to the Legends trilogy and like there's like no action scenes in those at all, especially the third of the Legends. But it's just These books are about the characters and the world building, and you just have to go into it accepting that.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed when they go out, like Derek's like, oh, this is going to be easy. And then like literally they're like, well, we'll see what happens. I could be getting killed for insubordination. And like they just kind of write up and they're like, yeah, we got something for you. Here's your boy. And just write off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the fact that the guy that got slaughtered just completely massacred out in the field and then just nonchalantly just, here, you can have that.
That is a great moment.
And then Lorana just, shooting an arrow at him because, hey, I'm not a knight.
Yeah.
I'll do what I want.
Can we talk about the prevalence of dragon orbs?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Everywhere they happen to go, they just stumble across a dragon orb.
Is the Green Gem Man in Dragon Orb too? Probably.
He might be.
So
maybe. I don't know.
For some reason, the Green Gemstone Man will not stay in my head because
when I not meant to.
Well, it's when I read last year when I reread the whole thing, I literally had to go back and like check because I'm like I have no memory of this person who I'm supposed to remember. I feel like, and I know he's mentioned in the first one, but even now I know that I still like have no memory of that scene. So it just leaves my head as soon as I read it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's really a character that's kind of built up. Like, he's only making cameos so he can appear in the third book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I do appreciate the fact that they didn't just have him pop up and be important or something. They've they're slowly setting it up and not dwelling on it too much. So, yeah, the dragon orbs aren't like, I mean, they find out where they are, but the only one they find by accident is in the High Claris Tower, I think.
I mean, you could say, well,
the group, Tanis's group sort of finds the one in Sylvanesti by accident. Like, they don't know. Tass is the one who knows where they all are. They've split up. Then they happen to run into Alhana, who goes, oh, well, I happen to know where a dragon orb is. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they had to travel to get there.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
they traveled deliberately toward it. Yes.
So is that...
It was more of a long, like, you can have it if you help me with my issue, and then you find out, oh, it's the reason for the issue.
Yeah. So that means, so of the, originally we were told there are 3 that are known where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that means there's still one that we know where it is in Palanathus, right?
Yeah.
In the tower. That wasn't that one?
That was the High Claris Tower.
So the other 2
Yeah, so we found that one too.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other 2 we officially still don't know where they are, technically.
So they broke one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
And that's the one from Sylvanesti. They broke that one.
Raceland has one.
From the Icewall.
Yeah, the one from the Icewall is the broken
all of them
one.
have the one from Icewall. And then
Raceland has the
one at
Sylvanesti.
High Claris Tower.
And then, High Claris Tower.
It was so weird how that broke, too. It was like...
Well, here's the thing. When Raceland gets his, he has to get Caramon to lift it up and put it in the bag of holding. And yet Tasselhoff is able to pick it up and throw it and smash it against the wall.
A, inconsistent, or B, Tasselhoff is a superhero.
I mean, we know Tasselhoff is the best character in the series.
Thank you.
Right?
There are dozens of us. Dozens.
Yeah.
So
who agree that Tasselhoff is the best character.
It's true.
Yeah.
Specifically him and Flint together for me. But
but him and Fizzban too, though, is such a good match.
Yeah, that is fair. Tasselhoff can match up with anybody and be great. That's just true. So yeah, he wins. But I think with that is it's mentioned that basically like it's dangerous to touch the orbs if you're trying to use them or in any way, and like so. Caramon's terrified to touch the orb, and I feel like that's why it still acts very heavy. But Tasselhoff's just like, oh, it's an orb. Like he doesn't care, and I think that's part of the why, because of like the magical explanation. But it's like the, because the first one is mentioned to be big, but also like the orbs seem to be able to willingly change their size if they want to, as well. So they're somewhat like sentient. So if they want to make it really hard to take, they can get big and heavy. and if they want to leave wherever they're going, they could shrink down to be more manageable.
I think they're made with dragon souls.
I believe that's what they said. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know if they
forgotten
said
that.
that.
But the one thing we haven't talked about yet, which is very important, is Mount Nevermind and the gnomes.
Yes.
I love the catapult system.
Yeah.
I forgot how much I love that passage. I literally felt like I was reading a Discworld novel for those chapters. That's something straight out of Terry Pratchett, and I loved it. So much fun.
It was very subvert. Like they were talking about, yeah, we have technology that's gone beyond stairs. I was like, oh, they got elevators. That's cool. And then he's like, they're about to go to war. I'm like, why are they about to look like they're about to go to war? And then they start throwing people up. I was like, what?
And the whole explanation of what happens if you fall.
There are actual gnome books in Dragonlance, and they're hilarious.
I
would probably read those over any of the other books, honestly.
I have one of the Gully Dwarves books, and I'm not excited to read that, but the gnomes definitely. But yeah,
Hey,
I love
don't hate on the Gully Dwarves. They're
I
precious.
mean, like, I don't hate them. I
Boo
just
is
don't
awesome.
know. I don't know if I want to read a whole series based on them, or I don't know if I think it might just be able.
It's hard to imagine what the storylines would be, or like how there would even be storylines.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it exists.
Shiny.
Is that the one where it's got Flint on the cover and he's surrounded by Gully Dwarves?
There is
Because I think there's only one Gully Dwarf book, and it covers Flint's time during the 5 years.
Let me check. It's in the overflow shelf. I can still hear.
How dare you, sir?
I love all of these other races, the Gully Dwarves, the Gnomes, the Kender, because like they're just doing their thing and like being decent people and like having lives and families and stuff. And then you've got all these humans and elves and dwarves sort of messing everything up for everybody else, you know, just getting all twisted up into like hatred and prejudice and, you know, do we have power or not? And then they bring about the cataclysm and, you know, now the Queen of Darkness is out corrupting everybody. And it's like, just be like the Gnomes and Kender and Gully Dwarves and just live your life and don't get mixed up with it. So I always like the sections with those other guys.
Yeah, I do have to
That's
say,
actually a really good point. The humans always mess up everything in
And
any
the elves,
fantasy
too.
series. It's
I mean-
always the humans' fault.
Yeah, well.
the elves and the humans. Gosh, now we're sounding like the elves.
The Gully
I've seen that
Dwarves. I've
book.
not seen that cover.
Yeah.
Nice.
I
So
might
this is
actually
one
have
of
that
the-
at my parents' house, but I don't think I've ever read it.
That's one of the lost histories. I have a few random ones I've gotten. So I didn't even know I had Dragons of Spring Dawning in the mass market. But I have Preludes Volume 1, the
The
Best
preludes are
Tales
awesome.
with, I'm not sure what's going on in this cover, but
It's like Jesus.
I've got
Sort of what it
The
looks
Day of Tempest from the 5th Age and Heroes
an old
Volume
one.
2. So those are my random
random
ones I have.
stack.
Yeah.
You're gonna make me want to collect them again, and I don't have room, Nico.
Well, I
There's
used
always a
like
room. There's room.
Always.
I don't even know which ones I've read. It was because when I was younger, I just like my local library had some Dragonlance novels, and I read all of them that they had. And
I'm
then
like that.
as I like
Star Wars.
got older, anytime I met like a thrift shop or something, if I see Dragonlance, which was like that's one of the fantasy ones you can find usually around, I would just grab anything Dragonlance because that was all I knew. And now I have so many other freaking books. But yeah, I agree. Make room.
Like, you guys don't even see I have a bookshelf up here, and then this is the start of the stack that's like a good 2 feet tall on top of the bookshelf. So Andrew, there's always room.
Yeah, I've got books stacked up all over the house. So
Yeah.
I have one room I'm allowed to store books in my house, and
Knock out
this
the
is it.
ceiling.
And I have to work in here too.
You don't need a ceiling.
You don't need room
I
to
think
spin
the
your
ceiling
chair.
goes straight into the bathroom. So unfortunately, I think there are pipes in the way.
But you don't need pipes. Just take them out of the way. It's fine.
Just
Expand the room. If the room gets bigger, she can't. Your wife can't complain. You're still in one room.
make like extend it with like a blanket fort and then just take over more and more of the house.
You just knock out the wall and make a blanket fort wall.
Yeah.
It's the addition. Yeah.
It seems a bit excessive.
Work.
Hey, if it's a blanket fort, then your daughter will also love it as well.
Yeah.
So
It's good parenting.
Win-win.
You make good points, except then she'll go in there and touch my books.
Yeah.
And she likes to eat books right now, so
What?
No.
No.
She's eating books?
Yeah, she takes her baby books and she shoves them in her mouth.
Oh, kids.
Yeah, we had that phase here about a year and a half ago.
And so, like, I'll take it out of her mouth and read it to her, and she goes, "Oh, cool."
Okay, we have. I was gonna say we have Pete's mom in the comments, but the best comments.
We're talking about it. It's in discussions. Give me a couple of years.
Can we go back to Gilfinus? Because Liam had said it earlier in the comments, like, he's such a bad character. And I don't remember what happens in the third book very well. But does he ever have a point to his existence? Like, he's just sort of annoying, and then he's being creepy with Silvara and falling in love for no reason. And I'm like, why are you here?
I honestly, he is probably the most forgettable of them, because I don't consider him a member of the Heroes of the Lance.
Mm-hmm.
I completely forgot about him being past Autumn Twilight. So, like, when he was in Winter Night, I was like, "Oh, you continue,
right?
Yeah, cool, bro.
He's just kind of there. I think he's mostly just for contrast between Tanis. But
yeah, I guess he's got to be like the elf doing the elf thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
They needed someone to fall in love with the silver dragon.
Right. Nobody else was available. I mean, Tanis could have done it. He's already torn in 2. Just have him be torn in 3.
Yeah, he falls in love with everybody, so.
Yeah, that's his thing. Could have worked.
I have to bring that up.
Tanis is the Captain Kirk of Dragonlance.
They literally make that comparison in the annotated version. They literally compare him to Captain Kirk.
Do they really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, if you let me find, well, where are my notes? Yeah, talk and I'll find my notes, because I mean
that actually
they compared him
greatly
to Kirk.
See, now I really want to read the annotated version.
I know. Well, when John and I were reading the first book together last month, he kept sending me all these notes about, like, well, and here's what the annotated version says about this part. And he sent me the Captain Kirk part. And I just had like 2 days where I was like, I need to think about this. I need to sit
now. Now I need to go buy the annotated version. Although I think that's out of print, isn't it?
It is. I bought an annotated version of the Legends and paid like $75 for it.
Wow.
Well, I mean, even the version that you and I have, Andrew, has been out of print too. That's why you had so much trouble getting a good one.
Oh God!
Even
my current copy is still not.
I was like, well, this is funny, what mine looks like. I bought this used.
Dom sent me his
very old.
back from when it was in print. Dominic, she shipped it all the way from the UK.
Wow.
And it was actually from a buddy, but I'm holding that. I'm like, this one feels 20 times better than the print on demand copy that I have.
Yeah.
Not super surprising. Wait, so what can you get printed on demand? In the Dragonlance
they've got that bind up of Chronicles still.
Oh,
whenever you buy it, that's still basically print to order.
That one, okay.
Oh, I didn't realize that actually.
That's cool.
This is an original with
the paper's super cheap.
Yeah.
On the new ones.
I mean, the pages are very thick. Like, this is super beat up, but it still says the suggested price on the back is $6.95.
Oh, those were the days.
That day.
Granted,
that's an original
$16 today.
That's in pounds. It looks like.
It was $35 on Amazon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It was not cheap.
Yeah.
My question is why don't they do the Legends as print on demand? Because I would actually buy that bind up.
Yeah, that one is way out of print. I think people just associate more closely with Chronicles.
It could be.
I've only read Legends once.
There's like a pillar, 12 books in Dragonlance, and then everything branches off from there. So there's, well, it depends on if you deem Time of the Twins as mandatory. reading for Dragonlance if you want the entire story. But you've got Legends, Chronicles, Lost Chronicles, Time of the Twins, or is that one called Brothers Magier? I don't remember.
I think it's Brothers Magier. Time of the Twins is one of the Legends books.
One of the three.
Correctly, yeah.
Well, I was looking for the Lost Chronicles, and you can get most of them pretty cheap, except for one single one, which is like impossible to find, apparently.
It focuses on Raceland. Anything focusing on Raceland is ridiculously priced.
Yeah.
And I've also heard that one just didn't get a big print run either, because apparently the first two didn't sell very well.
But that's the problem with, I feel like part of it is with like the D&D books, like at the time, like once they started taking off, like they were, all kinds of different authors were doing them. They were writing them at like a ridiculous pace. There was so much of it in the market that only the stuff that sold really got reprinted or looked at again. So it's because Liam, he put a couple of comments in, but he's been trying to collect all the Forgotten Realms novels, all like hundreds of them, and has had some trouble.
I feel like you can still find those really reliably in used bookstores, those Forgotten Realms, Chronicles. I mean, all of those big older
I think
series.
it really depends, because like in my journeys through the thrift stores, I don't see them that much. I really don't see any D&D books that much, but I'm also in East Coast, Southeastern Virginia on the coast, so I don't know.
Yeah, go up to Baltimore. There's a free book warehouse, and that's where I've gotten a
lot.
Books. Yeah, it burned down, so
Free
now they
book
have
warehouse.
limited dates because they're like operating out of a subpar space. But if you Google the book thing in Baltimore, you can get free books. Limit 50,000 per visit.
Well, I'm gonna be in the area really soon.
50,000 people?
50,000 books. It's sort of a joke. I mean, but they have just like cardboard boxes. So you just go in, you like grab as many boxes as you want to take, and then you just fill them, and
that sounds amazing. And
you take them home.
I need a different place before I do that.
I'm gonna have to convince my wife to let me go to that.
Dangerous.
Has anybody read War of the Souls?
Yes.
No, only Bethan.
It's been a long time, but I thought those were sort of executed well, like much better than Chronicles. I mean, I obviously love Chronicles the most because of nostalgia, but War of Souls has amazing characters and they're really well written.
I don't remember a lot of it, but that's like the end of the like story, so to speak, for Dragonlance.
Yeah, I really do need to read some more of them.
I remember enjoying War of Souls, but it's been a long time since I've read them, so I don't remember the details of them very well.
Yeah, same.
I just remember a crazy river. That's all I remember.
What is this, water country? Crazy river?
No, it's a river of souls.
I don't remember that.
Mandarin?
It's just craziness.
Those are the ones where Mina is like the main character, right?
I think so.
The warrior girl. Yeah. She's really cool.
But what did everybody think of kind of the evolving relationship dynamic that's breaking down between Caramon and Raceland?
Oh, I love it. It makes me sad.
You
That's
love
good.
that it makes you sad, or you love that they're
I
falling
love
apart?
it, and it makes me sad because it's good storytelling, right? Like it really, I mean, that's what drives Raceland's character and makes us sort of really understand his ambition and like who he's becoming and stuff. And like that's such a key, like convincing part of it is what's unfolding between them in this book, I think, and the little hints that we're getting about what's going on with them. So I really like it from like storytelling, but it makes me sad.
Yeah, it's their relationship too, and the more we find out and we start getting hints about like what happened when he did his testing to be a wizard too, and all of that, which we do get more in book 3. But I also, it's the whole like traveling circus thing they do also completely always makes me think of Wheel of Time too.
Yeah.
And so that's always fun. It's like a double nostalgia when I get to that part, because I'm having nostalgia for another series I love too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole dynamic that sort of is just changing between Raceland and Caramon, I mean, they're two of the most convincing characters for me in the book. And Raceland, it's a lot more obvious, but even with Caramon, like, he's such a strong character because he has like all these deep layers of like acceptance of like who his brother is and sort of like sacrifice for the sake of the world and like all this stuff that we're sort of if you are reading carefully, it's there underneath the surface when we're not, sort of writing him off as like the jokey, no brains, big guy, right? Yeah, so they're really strong characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to talk about Caramon without, getting into the events of the third book, because we see what happens there. And of course we see what happens between them in the Legends trilogy too.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. And that's kind of like where too, where like you think about one, you have to think about both, and just it's those interactions. I know I've said that a few times, but that's just what makes it. It's the characters interacting. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters may not be as strong on their own, but together they work really well in pairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you first mentioned characters pairing off, Nico, I totally thought you were going to immediately start bashing the love relationships. Then
wow.
You had these really interesting points, and then we got to bashing the love relationships. But yeah, I think that's Weiss and Hickman's strength, is that they can like just really show us relationships really, really well, and how relationships like bring out different things in the characters and change them, and they do a really great job with that.
I think they did a really good job with Lorana and Sturm in this case, because I think they were paired off well, but not in a love way, because Lorana was still, she had her moments of pining after Tanis, but especially that very last scene with Sturm where Sturm was like, "Hey, snap out of it. You're not Tanis, but I need you to go." And she's like, "No, but I'm still going to do definitely what Tanis would do, because it's still the right thing," which was really nice. I really did like her character growth in this book. I think we skipped a lot of it because of the ice wall, but I liked seeing her get away, because I feel like in a lot of significant ways she got away from the whole there was still there of like, I'm going to pine after Tanis, but there was also like, I'm growing up. Like the scenes in South Urgoth where she was having to go back and forth with her father, and she was struggling with that, and her older brother being a douchebag, like that was real. I thought that was really well done.
Well, and that's the funny thing, is because you mentioned Lorana and Sturm, two characters that most people were saying they really didn't care for in the first book. They pair those two together and they make it work.
Yeah.
Like they show a lot of growth through both. And like that is not at all the pairing you would have thought. You probably would have assumed like, oh, her and Tanis are going to pair off and have like a love relationship or something. Nope, we're sending Tanis off completely somewhere else, and Lorana and Sturm come together to create a strong bond too.
Yeah, so with the elves in this book, like I liked Lorana's like character arc. She's not my favorite character, obviously, but like I didn't understand. I guess from a cultural aspect, I understood why she got disowned. But like at the same time, like it's like, come on, like you're obviously the elves are being super childish for no reason.
Well, they're elves,
right?
That's
yeah, but I mean, when you look at somebody who's like 2,000 years old and they're throwing a hissy fit, you're gonna be like, oh, no thanks. I mean, I don't know. The speaker for the sun was just so childish, and then
I think it's stagnation, because if you're 2,000 years old, you think that like arrogance and stagnation combined with just like, I know everything, so my way is the right way. Obviously, we've been around for 2,000 years. We know things, so you should follow us.
It's sort of like talking politics with grandparents. I don't know what your family dynamics are, but that's sometimes how I feel with my grandparents, is just like there are these things that are so obviously the right course to me, and they can talk about it and think about it rationally and still end up, sort of stuck in their ways in that respect, right? So I sort of get it, but it's frustrating.
It's annoying, but it's realistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
You really get that feeling the way you phrased it, yeah, where it's just like, no, I can't possibly see anything other than what I think being correct, and really listen there. And like you do have some moments, like he realizes that his oldest son is probably not the most fit to rule, and like thinks about that, but he's just also still just stuck with whatever I think is right. You kind of get that brought up with that's part of the reason with all of the different elf tribes, basically. I know tribes isn't the right word, but like they're groups of the different
Nations?
ones, like well, like because they're almost described like they're once again not really an apt word, but almost like they're like different breeds of elves. Like the Sylvan Esty elves are said to be different than the what are the main elves? Qualan Esty elves. And then like you have like the wilder elves too. Like all of them are kind of like they've almost like evolved differently into slightly different people over time. But they're all like they just kind of like all thought they knew best, all looked down on each other for different reasons, and kind of like they didn't even have problems just with like humans or other species. They were just like even the other elves are not nearly as good as we are. We're the best elves. We know what's right, and so that kind of played into their problems.
Well, I think, and also furthermore is that they're all very secluded. Like you're gonna get shot at if you try to like infiltrate or whatever, and that's going to lead to what's the word I'm thinking of?
Tensions, misunderstandings.
Misunderstanding, superiority complexes, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Nationalism.
Yeah.
Toxic kind.
World War II.
Yeah, basically. But not as extreme in this case, I guess. But at the same time, yes, because they were literally using the Kaganesti as servants/slaves. So
yeah, that's
these very much the us versus them, and you get that with like the dwarves are very much kind of like that too, to a lesser extent, but it's brought up where really a lot of the different species that live do not want to work together. Like the Knights of Salamia are like that too. They're like, we're clearly superior. We don't really want to work with the elves or any of these other people, and it's you really get that, and that's kind of one of the main problems. And it's maybe in some cases it's played up a little bit more, but it just gives you like it's this kind of fragmented world where there's not really any peace, and all of these people just kind of try to do their own thing, and that's part of the reason why too. And granted, part of it I think harkens back to Lord of the Rings with like you've got your human, you've got your elf, your dwarf, all the different groups, but that harkens to the party in general. They're a collection of all these different people, which is probably not particularly common to have those kinds of relationships.
Right, and we get the backstory to explain it, that they all know each other from childhood through these strange circumstances, and so that's what has brought them together, as opposed to sort of being adults and learning to have that relationship. It's like it happened sort of organically through their strange childhood circumstances. So they're really unique, in their world. Yeah. Sad.
Did anybody else have an immediate immersion break at the beginning of the story when they got to Tarsus? Because I was unable to suspend my belief when it's been the Cataclysm was 300 years ago. You're going to tell me nobody knew that it was a landlocked city. Nobody knew. Like you knew the name of the city, you knew the city's reputation, but in 300 years, word hadn't reached that it had become landlocked due to the Cataclysm.
So that's always where, because they try to explain that the only way out is through the mountains, which have been closed off by the dwarves. But like I remember, like the map's not very good in this book either. But whenever I get to that, every time I'm like, we'll just see about that, and then I like look at my map to see if it's realistic, which I do a lot. Which is why I don't like it when books don't have maps, because I always like to fact check, but.
I mean, did they even ask anybody other than Tasselhoff, though? Like, it's also not clear if they, like, asked around, like, is there anywhere else to go? They're just like, oh, Tasselhoff has a map. And it's like, you guys have known him for 30, 50, whatever years. Have you learned not to trust his maps? Like, this shouldn't be a surprise.
It is brought up a ton by Flint. You think he's probably not even there.
Yeah, right. Listen to Flint. He is wise.
Flint is the only actual sane character. Everybody else is just mad.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah, kind of. He just wants to go
everybody else
home,
is a
whittle,
teenager,
and have a good cup of beer and some spiced potatoes. That's what Flint wants.
Them
Yeah.
spiced potatoes.
he wants a good life.
We need to like get some spiced potatoes recipes and then like send them to each other and like make them and then compare them.
It's in one of
We
the
should
books.
totally do that.
Really?
I forgot about that.
We should just do a spiced potato live stream then.
Yeah, we should.
I'm
Third
People
book.
will be completely
Let's do that.
confused. They'll show up for book content and get potatoes.
I see no wrong here. No disappointment whatsoever.
So I guess that leaves the big the big plot point that we haven't really talked about. And that is Sturm.
Which Sturm plot point?
Sturm.
The one where he gets stabbed through the chest.
Oh,
Yeah, that would be the
I
one.
was trying to forget.
The fact
How
that
did
Kitty
everybody
Yara did
feel?
it too.
That one. The inevitable end, because he's the tragic hero, you know, like there's no way he's going to come out of the story alive. Like he's too depressed and, you know, looking to sacrifice himself.
Well, they kind of make it. They're pretty on the nose and overt about like something tragic is going to happen to Sturm because I can't remember the exact wording, but Alana's like, one of us would have to die or something like that. To be together or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, but I'm like, well, you know, that's
Here we go.
an indicator.
And then there's all the allusions to somebody's gonna die soon. Hey, Greg's here.
Hey, Greg.
Oh yeah, Raceland every 5 pages who's like, some of us will never see each other again. Thanks, Raceland.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Foreshadowing. A+.
Yeah.
This will be the last time any of us see each other alive. What do you mean by that? I don't know.
I'm sure it'll be
I don't know. Ask the authors.
But yeah, Kitty Yara just straight up just stabbed him. She was like, "Oh yeah, he was my friend too." And it's just like, but you stabbed him in the chin.
Because she's evil.
But she's one of the 9 heroes, obviously.
Yeah, why does she get that stanza in the list of characters
It's stupid.
early in the book? I'm like, you are not one of these people.
Okay, guys. Looking at a map, it makes so much less sense. It's not good news, assuming this map is accurate.
You're not supposed to think hard about these books.
It's not good news.
It's really bad, though. Like, it's really bad.
My map
It's
looks
also
incomplete.
It's also clear in the book that Tarsus has contact with the outside world because they've heard rumors of wars.
That's true. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
heard it through the ground.
Right. And here again, Alhana gets there by air. But, you know, here again, surely that Tanis and group is not that isolated. Maybe they are. Maybe, you know, knowledge just travels too slowly where they're at.
well, but like it looks like
Yes.
they could have traveled a much, much less distance to get to water that still exists. And even like Tarsus is not far from the Ice Mountain Bay, and like the Icefall Castle is in the same direction but much further. So
But Tarsus had ships. That's the
Yeah, they had legendary winged ships.
yeah,
Right.
but like, I mean, they could have just taken a right and gone to Riggit, or like traveled much less further and gone to one of the many cities on New Bay.
Don't you
It looks
know? You always choose the scenic route.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, winged ships, man.
And the most
I do
beautiful
feel
ships. Yeah.
if you look at the map in Chronicles 2, it's not nearly as detailed as like ones that got out later. So I do feel like it's one of those series where they didn't think too hard about the geography, and then later when they kept expanding the world, it makes less sense. But I mean, that happens. It's just that's always one of the things I love looking at the maps and trying to figure out if it makes any sense what they're doing. And
Yeah.
with a lot of older fantasy, it doesn't so much, but.
So my map is actually incomplete. It's just I noticed it and it's really jarring. Let's see if the lighting will play with me. So at the top, like the coast doesn't continue all the way.
Yeah, it's the maps. it's hard to like. You could find like big ones that have been compiled, but most of them are in pieces, and you can't see all of the important areas even. So yeah, it's
but it's not even like classically. You could just do like a, hey, we're gonna have something that goes off the map, right? Have the edge go off the have the edge of the land go off the map. But here it's just like they don't even fill it in.
They ran out of pencils.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wizards of the Coast was pretty cheap back then, you know. They're like,
Well,
you have 5 minutes and 2 pencils, draw the map.
That's if you calculate out the amount of ink for completing the map, it comes out to like 4 cartridges of ink for 500 total books that they printed. So yeah.
Too rich for my blood.
Yeah. Ink is expensive.
They had a budget. It's all about those pennies.
Yeah.
Those make the billions. Or the millions? The tens of thousands? Who knows?
Or the couple dollars. We're counting pennies.
They needed it back then.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they did. I mean, overall, I still rated it, like, I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5. It was an improvement over Autumn Twilight.
Yes.
I think.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, even though like aspects of it were more enjoyable, I think more from nostalgia's sake and just memory of like, hey, I actually remember Dragons of Autumn Twilight much more than, 20 years on than I did Dragons of Winter Night. I remember nothing about Dragons of Spring Dawning. So I actually, I don't want to say I enjoyed Dragons of Autumn Twilight more. Like, I pretty much enjoyed them both the same. But if I were to prefer one over the other, I think I would prefer Dragons of Autumn Twilight, oddly enough.
From a nostalgia standpoint, I get that, because when I reread last year for the first time in many, many, many years, the first book, I still remembered a surprisingly large amount about it. And like there were just little things in it that some things I remembered I didn't even realize were from that book, like the name of the Valenwood trees. That was something I knew. And I'm like, oh, that's from this? I'm like, I knew that was a fantasy tree somewhere. And just like being at Solace and some of the other things, and like the Draconians that like burst into acid, when like so much of that, the little things were still so clear. And it was really great reading it. So that's why I always enjoy the first book more than I probably should, just because that's pure nostalgia. But then book 2, I feel like does get better. And I didn't remember as much about book 2 and 3 at all when I did my reread, but they definitely tell a better story.
Liam is voting first book as well in the chat.
Yeah, for the third book, I only remember 2 specific scenes from this particular book. As I was reading it, I remembered it, but I went in pretty much a blank slate. I knew one specific plot point. I had completely forgotten about Githalas and Silvara. Completely forgotten about them.
They're forgettable.
I mean, but like a river scene, you would think that I would remember that, but obviously I didn't. But I mean, from the first book, I always remember Flint sitting down and warming his bones on the rock. That is probably one of my favorite first couple pages in any fantasy book to this day still, just because I love Flint so much.
It's a great opening.
Book 3. There's definitely
Hasselhoff and the dragon, the fake dragon.
Yeah, I mean, that's the scene from the first book that I remembered when I got around to rereading it. Was Hasselhoff and the fake dragon, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this scene.
This is amazing. Yes. Well, I have to say the second book is my favorite in the whole trilogy. And like, I don't really remember much of what happens in the third book. I think my favorite part of the third book is when some of the things from the dream happen. And it's like, oh, this is a cool tie-in. But otherwise, the third book is like sort of forgettable for me. But the second book has always been my favorite just because we get more of the character development, especially of some of the annoying characters from the first book.
There are definitely some very memorable moments in book 3.
Yes.
That we will get to. There is one specific plot line I do not like in book 3, which I can't even, I don't think, say without spoiling it. So
I can't wait to find out what that is.
I say we'll talk about it next.
We'll talk about it next time.
I'm excited to reread it.
All right. So, anybody else? John, did you talk about what you liked about?
I like the first book better, but for me, it's because it duplicates the experience of playing Dungeons and Dragons more than the second one does. And especially this time that I read it, I noticed, the writing is not as good in the first one. It's better in the second. But when I was reading the first one, I was taking a ton of notes about, character interactions and, just the various things that were going on. When I was reading the second one, I'd write a plot summary on the chapter and then go on to the next. There wasn't a whole lot of moments in this one that really kind of stood out. Now, when I reread this one, obviously I remembered about Sturm, and then I actually remembered that Silvara was a dragon before it was revealed. I did remember that plot point. But really, and mind you, even reading through it, I read through this like a year and a half ago. Even rereading it now, there was a lot of the plot points of the second that I really didn't remember that well.
So more forgettable, yeah.
I definitely like this one better. Just
Team 2.
Team 2. We'll see how the third one kind of plays out. I like the character development a lot more. I think there was definitely I think you guys are right. There's more memorable moments, especially for kids, because they're just so dramatic moments. Like, I think, Nico, you were talking about the draconians turning into acid. Like, as a 16-year-old or even a 12-year-old, like, oh my gosh, some dude died and then turned into acid. That's so cool.
Yeah,
like, that's going to stick with you more than Lorana pining over Tanis and it being like,
and that's why when I was, because I read these when I was 10, 11, maybe even like slightly younger than that for some of them. And I remember the first book, so much of the things stuck with me. And when I was rereading it, there was a lot that I didn't remember, but it all just kind of clicked into place in my head. Like deep down, it was there. I didn't remember nearly as much about book 2 and 3. The story is better, but it just like a lot of the kind of crazy elements and stuff that almost doesn't even fit, like the whole traveling to the forest to see the unicorn, like it doesn't really come back for the most part, but like it's cool. It was a weird scene. Like there's just a lot of zany, weird stuff that happened in that one that's very, very memorable. I feel so. I always enjoy it. I do think, second book is probably better, but the nostalgia will never probably let me think that and appreciate anything more than the first book.
We all got love smiling unicorns.
Watson Hickman in the annotations noted that the second is their favorite as well. They both said that.
Yeah, and I honestly, the ending with Sturm, I just think that was such a great ending, and that's the big point that always sticks out. So there are, like I said, there are some other things that happen. I don't want to spoil because I know some of us it's a reread and some of us it's not. But
I think I'm the only one that it's not.
You haven't read it yet, Pete?
Are you really?
Oh,
that's right.
Yeah, this is my first time going through it all.
Wow.
Everybody else has said that they've read it. At least I know, like Evie, you said this is your first time in like a long, long time.
Yeah.
I reread them in
it'll be
2017, but yeah.
I was gonna say it'll be like I'm rereading Spring Dawning, completely new because, like I said, I remember nothing about it. So,
has anybody actually read Summer Flame?
Yeah.
I have, I believe.
I
A
have.
very long time ago.
How does that fit in with everything? Like, you were talking about like the main 12 books. Where does the Summer Flame fit in?
This directly follows up the end of Dragonlance Chronicles, but like, I don't know, 20 years later. I could be wrong. I'm pulling that out of the air, but it takes place. It is specifically, that's why it's titled Dragons of Summer Flame. It's like a follow-up to Dragonlance Chronicles, directly related, but kind of switching some things up. It's surprisingly good. I had never read this before last year, and I included it when I reread Chronicles, and I really liked it. It does have some kind of silly aspects, but the entire, basically, like I said, the premise of this book is just, I can't really fully say too much because I don't want to spoil book 3. But even in book 2, they start talking about how, it's just, the good, they know they'll prevail, evil always will be evil and whatnot, but kind of that feeling. And this just kind of flips that and has some fun with it. And it was a really
second generation as well? That follows the characters from second generation, right?
I don't think so.
I think it does because
I don't know who's in second generation.
I vaguely recall starting Summer Flame, and I think it does include people from second generation.
Yeah, it has Steel and Palin.
Yeah, okay, so if it has Steel, then it's second generation.
Yeah.
Well,
which then leads into the War of Souls.
It has some characters.
It's a bridge book
Chronicles.
between second generation and War of Souls.
I gotcha. See, it's just for the record, Steel is the plot point that I hate. Because that bothers me a lot. That I'm supposed to just believe that happened.
No. Pete hasn't read it.
Yeah,
she said
I totally
Steel.
agree.
She did not say any other details, and that's why I'm like, that is the vaguest way I could say it, since you know what I'm talking about. That
another 2 months.
Still annoys me. But yeah, I don't. Well, Pete, maybe we'll have to read this after.
Yeah, I have it, so I think I'm gonna plan on reading it now. Just
I don't really have
something
time
you hate,
to read
so
this,
that's
but...
interesting.
No, I actually really like it. There's just one specific point that I had to just get over and let myself enjoy the book because it bothered me a lot. But like I said, the premise is pretty fun, and the ending is just perfect. It really kind of makes you just feel like that perfect ending in some different ways than you might expect. But I really liked it. So.
Cool. So maybe 4 now. Does anybody have any final closing thoughts now that we're an hour and a half in?
Fizban's the best, and so is Tasselhoff.
More Raceland and more Tasselhoff in the third book.
You will get that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Tasselhoff, not Raceland. Raceland's kind of okay.
True.
I think you get a little bit more Raceland in the third book, but like his character starts making a lot more sense in the third book.
Okay, good. Okay, now I'm happy because his character is like, I'm still on Alan's camp of like, why are you the way that you are? Gosh, shut up.
Yeah, a lot of that gets filled in.
If it makes sense, then I'm glad.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years, so I don't know if my promise will be fulfilled, but I remember it making more sense.
Yeah, you get a lot more. I really was not planning on joining this originally, but I'm glad I did because I had fun rereading book 2, even though it's only been like a year-ish. So I read these like last year at some point. It was like early, I think, but like I really enjoyed reading book 2, and I'm really excited to read book 3 and book 4. So this has been a lot of fun just talking about it. So I'm glad I got to be involved in this.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with Nico there. I wasn't planning on rereading it either, but I've really enjoyed it.
A lot of people. We had a lot of people drop from after Autumn Twilight.
Yeah, we had 8 on the first show.
Yeah, and I think only 3 of us are original.
Yeah.
It worked out though, because jumping in, I'm like, I guess they're not super long, and like I'm really behind, but it's just, this is a series. I wish I would have reread the first book. I didn't. I just watched people who reviewed it from doing it, and I'm like, I'll remember. And like I was watching Andrews, I'm like okay, that's right. This is what happens. I had to remind myself, but I didn't have time to reread that too. But it's that's a fun series.
So I will say that obviously no pressure to join for the third book. If you want to carry on with it, awesome. I think the plan is, Andrew, you're going to host the discussion, right?
For number 3.
Yep, sometime in September, hopefully. Yep. Maybe.
And if we push on to the 4th, maybe Nico can host that one.
Yeah.
I'm game.
You've been voluntold.
Voluntold. Don't worry, we'll run a Discord together. I'll apply some pressure.
I can't escape too much. He's the reason I'm in this one even at all. So, like, hey, I know you've just been saying your TBR is ridiculous. You want to add more to it? I'm like, come on.
Always.
Classic.
Yeah, I find myself really excited to talk about book 4 though. So yeah, I'm happy to host if we need to. So yeah.
Sweet.
Cool.
I will say that so my final thoughts is I experienced this one specifically as an immersion read, and I did an audiobook with it. Really elevated the experience for me. So
the audiobook is surprisingly good.
Cool. Well, if you guys want to see the first one we did on Dragons of Autumn Twilight, that is on Evie's channel. At She Was Only Evie. And the next one, as we said, Andrew's going to host it for Dragons of Spring Dawning, so keep an eye out for that. And I think that's all, folks. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're watching this afterwards, thank you so much for getting to this point. Y'all are awesome. We love you. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody.